You've come just in the nick of time because we were just about to start, so that's perfect. So thank you all for coming out on this chilly evening. When John and I have been conversing over email, he joked about being stuck in the snow in Cairngorms, and actually there are some people stuck out in Glossop who couldn't make it here tonight, which is a bit unfortunate.
Well, the book is called Tracing Snowflakes, it's just perfect.
Yeah, it is. So a few items of housekeeping. So we're filming tonight. If you don't want to be on the film, don't walk in front of the camera. But if you ask any questions, then it will be on the video, and that's going to be uploaded probably to YouTube. I might ask Wavy about that. There's no fire drill expected, so if there is a fire alarm, then you need to leave via one of these two emergency exits, please.
Yeah, the windows are here, guys.
You want to launch yourselves out. And if you've got a mobile phone, can you switch it to silent, please? Thank you. Okay, so switched it off. So the schedule for the evening is we're going to have the lecture from...
It's not a lecture.
The wondrous presentation from John. He will then answer some questions. He's going to do book signings and socialising up in the cafe because at 8 p.m. there is a yoga class in here, so we have to be out by 7:45. So we've got 1 hour on the clock from now. As you'll see on your chairs, you have a little bit of information about tonight with a quiz. So you can also do that when you're up in the cafe, and then I will mark the papers and do the prize giving. So the announcement of this lecture brought quite a few emails to our inboxes, two of which are quite interesting. Firstly from Val Lum, who supplied this rather lovely photograph, which you can all see around the room and on your chairs. And she wanted to know who the people are in this picture. So rather than just send it round and have a boring Q&A, I've turned it into a quiz, and the winner will get a copy of John's book. So
Signed
with a personal
with
comment.
a personal dedication.
Yes. So it's everything to play for this evening. You can work in pairs or in groups if you want to, but you only win, if you're going to win as a pair, you're only going to win one book, so you're going to have to fight it out for who's going to win it. And if you've already got the book, then I'll refund you the cost of the book as well. Mobile phones are also allowed, so if you're savvy, there might be more than one way to skin a cat, so you might be able to find some hints or tips maybe on the KMC website.
Maybe.
So the second email that I received was from Plum's nephew, Dave Fairhurst. So it found its way to my inbox all the way from Oklahoma in the US, and this is what he said. Hello Emily. I would just like to wish the KMC members and John Rosenfield a wonderful evening on the 6th of February. I'm sure there will be some really funny stories to hear about Plum. There will certainly never be another Plum. Plum was my uncle, and I spent many adventures with him throughout my younger and middle years. I was 8 when he taught me to ski on a hot August day 52 years ago, going up the Cairngorm chairlift with skis, getting odd looks from people. Little did they know, Plum knew a patch of snow that never melted. I can imagine there were some wonderful stories told from John. Unfortunately, I live across the pond in Oklahoma, so I won't be there, but I thought I would wish you all a great night. Kind regards, Dave. I thought that was a really nice thing to receive. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to John Rosenfield. Thank you.
Thank you. I just need to tag on a bit to what Emily has said, because I am in possession of the great man's briefcase and its contents, which he gave to his original biographer Doug Godlington, including a letter from Prince Charles and his skiing manuals, which he wrote himself. And Dave, his nephew in Oklahoma, I've asked his permission that this briefcase and its contents goes into the Cairngorms archive. We are working with the Cairngorms National Park, and it's based on a collection of books and literature about the Cairngorms by Joe Porter. but that briefcase is going into there. So I have brought this tonight for your eyes only. And I hope you enjoy the contents of it. It's my special gift to the Karabiner Mountaineering Club for all the help you've given me through being So, 2 weeks ago I gave a presentation about my book to in Aviemore to the people who knew him better than I did, but knew nothing about his career in the Peak District. And they were very appreciative. Tonight I'm going to show you about his adventures in Scotland, because I know some of you old-timers remember him here, but I'm going to tell you where I knew him most, and his second wife, Nan, in Scotland. He was my boss, my chief ski instructor, and my dear, dear friend. And on the occasion of my wedding to my wife Janice, he presented me with 2 of his paintings. He painted a lot, especially on the walls of his house and on the walls of Glenmore Shop. If you want to see Glenmore Shop, it's still got the mural painted by Plum of the Kangaroo Mountain. Right, let's get into the slideshow. I am John. I am a Manchester boy. I'm a Manchester Grammar School boy. 2 years ago I was here quite a lot. We were 500 years old, celebrating, partying, but I no longer recognise the city I grew up in. I went to Manchester Grammar School and on to university. While all this was happening, my uncle, my father's brother in Chadderton, gave up his job working as an accountant for the mills and took over Loch Morley Youth Hostel. This was at a time when the skiing boom in Aviemore was just in its infancy, when everyone, the whole world, attention was held on Sunday afternoon for Ski Sunday and David Blind's pullovers, if you remember that, and C&A dressing everybody in gaily coloured ski suits. It was just at the very beginning, and this is where I got to know Plum, at this youth hostel. I know quite a lot about the history of this hostel. That is a rare slide. This is when it was Glenmore Lodge. That is the Reverend Bob Clark, who was warden of Glenmore Lodge, and that is Dick Gowers, who probably deserves a biography to himself. But I know that it was built as a shooting lodge for the Dukes of Gordon, and I know that it was used by Norwegian commandos during the Second World War, the Company Linge, who there is a Norwegian memorial in the hostel garden. The lot who blew up the German heavy water plant at Fenwalk. I know they were there because one glorious summer's evening my friend and I found a live hand grenade. We didn't know it was live at the time, but eventually the bomb disposal squad from Edinburgh, I was having kittens because my uncle was away, came up and identified it as a live Norwegian hand grenade. They didn't know why it hadn't gone off, but they sandbagged it, put it in the ditch, and it broke about 3 of the windows in the hospital. I carried that thing 80 yards, but I'm still here to tell you the story. Right, before anything of this, in the early days, Plum never kept a diary, but he did actually write down that he had spent a day in the company of these 2 gentlemen. This is Ivan Mark Waller. He is a man who did the Colin Ridge when he was 70 years old. I don't know, do any of you young climbers climb with earphones and your iPods?
Ivan Waller, I remember him.
Yes. Well, Ivan Waller on Trifan climbed 1/3 of the way up the climb onto a ledge and put his gramophone on the ledge. And then went back and did the climb. The other one is Sir John Lawrence Jack Longland, who is famous, well, Longland's climb on Snowdonia, which he said on Radio 4 he climbed by accident because he missed his way. Now, Jack Longland also opened the Whitehall Centre in Buxton, and I know that Plum visited that place and went there. But the reason I'm showing you this slide tonight is because Plum actually wrote this down as being an important milestone in his life. I think these 2 men gave him direction. That day he decided not to be a plumber, from where he got his nickname, or a builder, but to be a man of the mountains. And I would think by the end of his life he could justifiably consider himself an equal of these two, albeit very much in his own way. So I wanted to show you those two tonight. Plum was at Dunkirk during the war. That is as much as I can tell you tonight, because for all the years I knew Plum, he never ever talked about it. When he was pressed one day by 2 or 3 school kids, all he said was, "I saw too many of my mates go down." And I respect that. I respect anyone who was at Dunkirk, or indeed any part of the Second World War. But the war ended happily for Plum, because he met this lass. This is Martha Robinson. And I have a copy of their wedding certificate, and the wedding certificate is dated Boxing Day 1941. I don't know if any of you knew that. That is when he married Robbie. So Martha Robinson, in the way of nicknames throughout this whole story, became Robbie Worrall. And I never knew her, but this is how the war ended for Plum. And towards the end of the war, Plum acquired a house at 37 South Grove off Kingsway. And that house is the genesis of the Karabiner Mountaineering Club. Plum painted the walls with murals of the Alps and the Lake District hills. And for 3 or 4 years, your predecessors, the Karabiner Club, met at that house every Friday night. Robbie would provide the tea and the toast, and the conversation would be, where are we going climbing at the weekend? Which leads me on to the formation of your club. I'll read to you. Matters came to a head during a weekend of planning and dancing in Edale on November 1944. The venue was the Old Nag's Head in Edale, a pub which is right at the start of the Pennine Way and is overlooked by Kinder Scout and dates back to 1577. On Saturday the 11th of November everyone was in high spirits, and Jeff Cockcroft won the Waltz spot prize of a bag of crisps. Isn't that wonderful? They suggested names for the new club, including the West Lancashire and North Cheshire Speleological and Rock Climbing Club. And someone thankfully said, well, 2 things. One is nobody knows how to spell it. But the other, he said, the initials are just rubbish. And therefore, you are called the KMC, which rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? And that was decided at that place. And then, what I want to tell you is that they went back to 37 South Grove and went round saying who wanted to be founder members and on the committee. And Plum said, yes, I will be a member as long as my wife Robbie is a member. And at that point, so the journal says, all eyes turned to Len Stubbs, because they knew that a month before he had resigned from the Rucksack Club because they had the audacity to allow women to join their club. Can you imagine that? And Len recorded in the journal that he said, Robbie had made me tea and toast for the last month or so, I could not refuse her. Now I'm not saying that Robbie was the first female member of a mountaineering club, but she was instrumental in the founding of your club. That's how important she was. And there are Plum and Robbie in camp together. Now, most of their adventures are recorded in the KMC journals. David has all these tonight. And they are well recorded, and that's no part of my story that I want to tell you tonight. This is about Scotland. So we come to the desperately sad bit. This is Cyril Cartwright. I have been in touch with his widow, Doreen. Cyril Cartwright, the name is very famous in cycling circles. He won a gold medal for Britain for cycling. Not in the Olympic Games, not in the Commonwealth Games, but the Empire Games. Do you remember the Empire Games? This guy won a gold, this is Plum and Robbie teaching him to ski. This guy won a gold medal for Britain, that. Here's something you might like to try. I know from his widow told me what he did one weekend was cycle from here to London and back. Does anybody fancy trying that? Anyway, Cyril Cartwright retired from racing cycling at that level, professional cycling, and was diagnosed with possible arthritis. And he took on a book which we would call today Naturopathy. It was written in 1930 by Harry Benjamin. And that was the day that Robbie Worrall went to the doctors in Manchester because she knew she was ill, and he referred her to Christie's Hospital, and she was diagnosed with cancer and given very, very few days to live. And Cyril Cartwright it was who moved close to Plum, as along with others. I'm not saying he was the only one. And together they went through this book, and they put Robbie on a diet more or less of vegetables. They withdrew all protein. Meanwhile, Plum whisked her away to Switzerland. He sold his business in Manchester and his house, and he whisked her away to Switzerland, and they must have said, in the time you have left, where do you want to go? He brought her to Scotland. What I want you to do for the next 5 minutes is relax, sit back and enjoy. I will show you why Plum and Robbie and then me both decided that living in the foothills of the Cairngorms is not that bad an idea. Enjoy. That is a sunrise, not a sunset on Cairngorm. That is a sunset. Loch Moray. That is Loch Arn, which lies on the other side of Cairngorm. If you go up Cairngorm and down the other side, glacial loch. Those are numbers 3 and 4 of the highest mountains in Britain. Cairntoul on the left, Brereach on the right, and in the middle a graceful peak called Angel's Peak. Underneath that is a huge loch called Loch and Wan near the Green Loch. I've camped there many times. That is the Laird's snowfield. There is a legend in the Cairngorms that if that snow ever melts, the local laird will die, and the last time it happened he did. I'll leave that with you. That is the beautifully named Loch Etchican. That is looking at Cairngorm, that is Cairngorm from the back side. Loch Etchican is Gaelic, it means the Loch of the Junipers. That is the Eagle's Corrie. It faces due south. It's unique among the Cairngorm corries. And then sometimes it just gets poetic. So this is part of the slideshow that we used to show to the hostelers. Right, Plum brought Robbie to Scotland. That is a very, very rare photograph of Jean's hut. Has anybody heard of Jean's hut?
Yeah.
It had 2 lives. It was built in memory of Jean McIntyre, paid for by his father. I have talked to people who helped to build that. But its original position was right in the middle of Cairngorm Mountain, where the modern railway, the trains cross, but where the middle chairlift station was. Now, Plum brought Robbie, who was on a diet of carrot juice by now. Harry Benjamin's book suggested plenty of fresh air. I don't think Harry Benjamin could have dreamed of how much fresh air Robbie got. They camped by Jean's hut for a winter and a summer. Jean's hut was eventually moved into Corrie and Lochan by Bill Blackwood in his tractor. If some of you know that, I'm sure. That is quite a rare photo, but that is where Plum and Robbie spent their first winter on Cairngorm. And then they saw Carl Fuchs teaching his classes. He was the Austrian racer, but he took over Struan House in Carbridge. And it was a time when he and Glenmore Lodge were getting very busy. People wanted to come and ski. And he took on Plum and Robbie to be instructors with them. This is how he came in from the cold and moved into Scotland. He also spent his time volunteering at Glenmore Lodge. This is the slide I showed you. But they were getting busy as well before they moved up to their present building. So they shared their time helping Carl Fuchs in his ski school, and Robbie in particular was volunteering to help out here, making putties for Glasgow school children and things such as that. And then they came to the Austrian ski school in Carbridge. Someone in Agamore said, "Doesn't look like that now." And indeed it doesn't. It's sad to see. But I'd like to present to Neville Macmillan, who stayed there a long, long time ago, the book called Struan, which has been written by one of the barmen who worked there. That now has been left to go to rack and ruin. But there is a plaque opposite honouring Carl Fuchs. Now, while Plum was ski instructing there, the office, are you ready for a story? Would you like a story? The office at Struan got a telephone call from Gormeston School. And the telephone call said there is a Mr. Green who would require private lessons from Struan, and he would be conveyed to Cairngorm by helicopter. And this is when Prince Charles first came to Cairngorm. In 1961, his father had been, and he had been taken up Cairngorm and given a demonstration by the instructors. So maybe that was instrumental. But Carl took him for his first lesson. Thereafter, Plum took him for 4 or 5 lessons, bringing him, skiing with him at the top and bringing him down to the shieling where security men were waiting for the prince, who conveyed him back to Gordon's. One story Plum himself told me was that one day security completely failed, and the prince turned up, and so did 3,000 of the world's pressmen. And they found a security man who was the same build as Prince Charles, dressed him up in the same ski clothes. And Plum took the decoy and 3,000 of the world's pressmen, as you can guess, and every dance over hill, up and dale, up, down and dale, and ever, while the prince enjoyed a private lesson with Carl Fuchs. And all this happened while Plum was at Struan House. What's next in my story? Many of you on the Barnsley Club came up to Struan to ski with Plum. Some of you here tonight, probably. There was a close link at this time between you and the Barnsley Club, and this is Plum. And look at the length of skis. At this time, these are mostly ex-army skis. It was Les Caulfield from the Barnsley Club who told me that they had to saw 2 feet off the bottom of the skis to get them on the bus, to take them up to Gloucester. It's not the way you would treat a modern pair of skis, but this is what Plum did with members of the KMC and the Barnsley Club, and this is him in full swing in Scotland. You will note the ski boots, basically. Okay, and then came the time when Martha died. Now, I have learnt more and more about this since I wrote the book and have gone on. I had a letter from one of you who said he was there at Struan the night before she died with Bowden Black and Millie Black, and they, late into the night, they danced and swung, told stories and drank together, and that was Robbie's farewell. It was 3 years longer than she had expected to live. And I put in my book that she's buried in Rothiemurchus Church, which is about 200 yards from my house where I live. She is not. Fiona Thompson corrected me on that. She said, no, my husband was one of the pallbearers. She is buried in the Doon, which is the Laird of Rothiemurchus' private house. Now tonight David showed me some photos of that funeral. We're going to get together tomorrow and research more about Robbie Worrall. Martha Robinson, who became Robbie Worrall. She was the most wonderful woman, even though I never knew her. After that, Plum, they told me, by the way, the people who were there, that when she died, Plum disappeared for 6 days onto the hills. Nobody knew where he had gone, how to contact him. After the funeral, Plum lived quietly at the back of Jack Thompson's house at Glenmore Lodge. Now at this time, Plum Worrall Lodge had contacted Plessy Brennan in Snow and had realised that they were doing the same job and had agreed to exchange instructors. So Plum asked if he could go that summer to Plessy Brennan. And he spent that summer, after Robbie died, here at Plessy Brennan in Snowdonia. They sent me these photographs. And then he just quietly got himself back into living. But one day, and you guys have told me plenty about this, he met this lady who worked in the Monarch Laundry. He met her at a bus stop and said, I am going to the local dance, would you like to come to a dance with me? And that is the Nan who became his wife and my very, very best friend. He taught her to ski. She got a job working at the Schulen while Plum was instructing at the hostel. Now, those two members are Karabiner men, I've forgotten their names. Well, the wedding certificate tells me that Len Stubbs has signed the wedding certificate. What I do not know is if he was best man or not. But the rest of the people in that slide are Nan's family. And I wish they were here now. We owe them a great debt because Nan's family it was who packed everything into the briefcase at the back and preserved it for us. We owe them a great debt. So Plum and Nan lived the life of Riley. And having instructed at the lodge, I'm going to jump back and forth in time now because it's important to tell you that Plum went over to Austria. Now I'll tell you a little bit about Austrian skiing. Austrian skiing, ski racing, they make no distinction between teaching and racing. The only reason you would teach anyone to ski in Austria is that they become a racer. They have the same attitude to ski as the New Zealanders do to rugby. They have a God-given right to win, and when they win, all is well with the world. And if they don't, something is badly wrong with the world and we ought to fix it. Now, if you research the history of Austria, I mean, look at the style, it's rather relevant, isn't it? Plum went to St. Christoph on Arlberg, where this man, you might well do well to pronounce the name, but if you look and research the history of Austrian skiing, this name will be writ large along with Hannes Schneider and Anton Zehler. And this guy is the godfather of Austrian skiing that produced Hermann Mayer, De Kaiser and Franz Klammer. And Plum went to where he was, the Hall of the Mountain King. That's not surprising. What is surprising is that Professor Stefan Kruckenhauser took notice of Plum. And what defies all belief is that Plum talked with Professor Stefan Kruckenhauser on the subject of skiing. And Stefan Kruckenhauser listened to a Karabiner man with his ideas of skiing. And he invited Plum to take his course. You didn't apply to go on one of Kruckenhauser's courses. You were invited. And Plum took his course and passed it. His certificate is at the back. This act alone put him miles apart from and miles ahead of anyone else in Britain at the time in the world of skiing. He went to Norway and met this man who is Arne Palm. And in the world of Norwegian skiing, his name is writ large as well. And it was on the boat on the way back from Norway that his book at the back there, he'd written in pencil, that he thought he'd compared these ideas from Austrian ski teaching and Norwegian ski teaching, and it was time to form a British Association of Ski Instructors. This was unthinkable in the 1950s. And so, we have that photo. This is the Great and Glory, this is the photograph I sent you.
Ah, yes.
And this is at the hostel when we ran a week's ski course. It was done by a week. We would collect you from the station on a Saturday and fit you up with skis. Plum was chief instructor. And during these years, we went through being a team of 3 ski instructors, to 4, to 5, to 6, and then 6 and a cross-country instructor. And that single-decker bus became a double-decker bus during the ensuing years as we got busier and busier and busier. The youth hostel had 86 beds. At Easter, we frequently had 120 people staying. I don't think not what we'd say about it now, but we had 20 people sleeping on the floor and taking them skiing. That is Kathy Murgatroyd, a great friend of mine and a beautiful skier. She would not thank me for telling you this tonight, but Hamish Brown was the first man to walk all the Scottish Munros in one trip and wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
Kathy Murgatroyd was the first woman to do the same. She would not thank me for telling you that tonight. She has asked that she didn't ever want to write a book, but I just thought I'd show you that. And we were very greatly honoured the 2 years she spent ski instructing with us. She's been to my house many times. She lives in Tainault in Argyll. And there is Plum in his full glory with his jacket. Dave Fairhurst thought I'd tell you funny stories. A lot of them involved that jacket, with dropping his lighted pipe in the pocket and getting underneath his van and getting oil all over it. That was the way he treated his clothes, but I'm not telling you too many of the funny stories tonight. And this is how we operated. We'd collect you on Saturday night, fit you up with skis, and then breakfast, packed lunch and dinner. On the Tuesday nights we would take you skating to the outdoor ice rink at Coyley Bridge. And on Friday night we'd have a ceilidh to finish it all off. Those of you who know Plum will know ceilidhs very well. He never told me that he sang the Strawberry Run, but he was quite happy for me to recite Stanley Holloway monologues, which I can still do. But Plum and I ran the ceilidhs together, which ended every Friday night ski course at the youth hostel. And that was the sort of weather we used to get. I don't think I see that very often these days. But this is why I know, and I've written a history of this youth hostel. Those were in its glory days. And Plum, as chief instructor, and from what he learned from these great Austrians, Norwegians, and his others, was that beginners were precious and priceless. And very, very, very rarely would we take beginners up the hill on the first day or even the second. This is at the bottom of the hostel garden, and this is a ski class being sheltered from the crowds on Cairngorm. This is pure Plum's direction. And whenever he could, he would take us, not on cross-country skis weren't invented. He would take us through the forests. One in particular, he would take the whole ski course. By the end of the week, everyone could ski reasonably well down into Corrynick East and then cross the road, and then he knew a route through the forest, which we used to ski down at frightening speeds, and sometimes the only way you could stop yourself was by grabbing hold of a tree. And everybody used to get back full of cuts and bruises, but they'd all had a wonderful time. This is pure Plum. And often enough, instead of going into the Shieling, which was busy and crowded, this is where we would have lunch. This is Plum's direction to us. That is a youth hostel ski course having lunch. You could get these little bottles of wine in those days and you stick them in the snow for a couple of minutes. They're beautifully cold. It's as good as any fridge. And this is what Plum did for the ski school at Plum Worrall. And he sheltered us from encounters with the reindeer, which are all over the hills. I knew Nick Alotzi and his wife very well. And he sheltered us from things like that. That's Corrycast Skeeto on the week before Easter. I've known the White Lady with 8 lines, one behind the other. And this is why Plum was very keen to instruct us a lot, his team of instructors, that we should stay away from this as often as we could. And we did. And there you are. Some people came prepared for anything. Plum once told me, well he did, he made a blow-up canoe and he took it down the White Lady. But these are the people, and this was Plum's golden time at the youth hostel ski courses when they were at their busiest. Every Friday night we had a ceilidh. And I don't think I will demonstrate it for you tonight, but the first dance at that ceilidh was always a Loch Morley ski dance. You started by doing 8 parallel turns to your partner. I'll not do all 8 for you, I'm not fitting up anymore. And then you stand in a snowplow and dozy-do with your partner, and then you sneak down the White Lady together and head going back up. This was Plum's invention. The most memorable Cayley was when a group of Morris men turned up on the ski course. And we didn't teach them to dance, they taught us to dance. And I realised these Morris men were the fittest people I have ever seen. They could do standing jumps which would take your breath away. Cayleys, a great part of Plum's accessible. In 1986, and I've given David, 1986 I think it was, I've given David the brochure. The SYHA, the youth hospital, decided to retire Plum. They decided he was retiring age. And they gave him a wonderful dinner at the Winking Owl in Avignon. Plum said, thank you for a wonderful dinner. And then he spent the next 7 years in Courmayeur working for Interski. I thought, if you don't want me, okay, I'll go and work for Interski. And he fixed himself up with a genuine Italian mama and stayed in her house, in her guest house. And there are many, many stories from his years with Interski. A friend of Doug Godlington's worked with him. He would astonish the Italian instructors by his ability to balance on his hands on bottles. If Plum was born with anything, it was a gift of perfect balance. That is why he made skiing look ridiculously easy, and why both his wives would testify that Plum could dance all night without getting out of breath. The same did not apply to his mere mortal wives. So, for the next 7 years of his life, Plum went working for Interski. And the stories of him forgetting his class and having to go back up on the last train up to bring him down. Stories of him falling into a snowdrift and getting all 8 of the kids behind him to look for his pipe in the snowdrift, which he lost. And stories, and then the main thing that came out of the Italian instructors was that when the people arrived in Courmayeur for the week and were introduced to Plum, they looked vaguely disappointed, but after as much as 3 days, nobody wanted to leave him. They all thought the world of him and all learnt to ski very well. And this was after the SYHA dismissed him as retiring age. He just went on and on and on. And I asked them, I said, can you send me pictures for my slideshow Interski that will impress the people? And she emailed me last week and said, here are 2 pictures, John, from Courmayeur. And this was in the days when Plum was instructing for him. So this marked the end of the great man's skiing career. How am I doing for time, Emily?
We probably have about 20 minutes before we need to move upstairs.
Okay.
So leaving some time for questions, possibly.
Yes, okay. So this is Interski, and 1996, I think, he finally retired and decided that he would not ski teach anymore. But I could tell you many more stories from Interski. Plum and Nan, after that, went to New Zealand. I need to tell you a story. This involves the KMC very much. That is David Swan. David Swan, I've been in correspondence with David Swan. He lives in British Columbia. He was a KMC man. David Swan had a sister called Wendy. And the next man to join the KMC was Brian Fernley, who was training to be a doctor. And everyone in your club recorded that the first time Brian Fernley and David's sister Wendy saw each other, they decided they were partners for life. It's only complicated by the fact that Plum, and it can only be Plum, decided that thereafter Brian Fernley should be known as Trog. That is not a question you should ask me why. I can't explain. But Trog and Wendy, when he qualified from being a doctor, moved over to New Zealand. David went with them, but David didn't stay he moved on to Fiji, where he met an American girl. He married her, and they now live in British Columbia. The other KMC man who went out there to New Zealand is Pete Farrell. Now, Trog and Wendy, as I shall call him, and Pete Farrell all became members of the New Zealand Alpine Club, well-respected members. Pete Farrell was the man who, with two others, started the Mountain Guides Association of Mount Cook. And both of them went on an expedition to Janu, Wall of Shadows. Being a New Zealand team, the foreword is written by no less a person than Sir Edmund Hillary. They were well backed. But I'm going to present this to the K1 Club archive because Pete Farrell is mentioned in this. If it's light enough, I'll read it to you. In June, Limbo invited Pete Farrell to lead the expedition. Janu, by the way, I should have explained, is an outlying giant of the mountain that we call K2. And a French and a Japanese team have attempted to climb it and failed. And I'm afraid the New Zealand has failed as well. I don't know to this day if anyone has. In June, Limbo invited Pete Farrell to lead the expedition. There were only 12 months to organise everything. We couldn't postpone even if we wanted to, because the Japanese had scheduled an attempt for the pre-monsoon in 1976. Pete Farrell was a legend in the climbing world when I began climbing. This rugged Mancunian character left his native Manchester while in his late teens, and after a period in Australia, journeyed on to New Zealand. Almost immediately, he began giving the southern peaks the once-over, and he was soon making a name as an indomitable mountaineer. And that is a testament to a KMC man. Now,
You okay with the lights off?
yes, yeah, you can turn it off now, yeah. Thank you, Emily. These were the people who invited Plum and Nan to New Zealand. Trog and Wendy very much mimicked Plum and Robbie's house in South Grove, and they made their house, made sure it was welcome to mountaineers from all over the world. This young man came to stay with them. I don't think I need to introduce him to you. He came to stay at Trog and Wendy's house. And these are the people who, out of pure love and affection for Plum, invited him over to New Zealand. Wendy's letter and other places have told me that for months before their arrival, they bought an old Bedford van. The kids did it up as a camper van. They presented it to Plum and Nan. They took them skiing at places like Mount Hutt and Cardrona, and Plum told me that everywhere he went, someone would have said, "Hey, there's Plum from Aviemore." And they took him walking on the Routeburn track. They took Plum and Nan walking on the Routeburn track. And this is an area of his life which is becoming more and more opened up to me. And this is how Plum and Nan enjoyed their time in New Zealand, and it's purely a story of KMC men. Trog and Wendy and Pete Farrell all spent a month in Plum and Nan's company out of sheer love and affection. That is the occasion of his 80th birthday. And this is when Pat Holt wrote to the palace, and there's a letter there from Prince Charles congratulating Plum on his 80th birthday and saying how good it was, his ski lessons while I was at Gormeston. And that is a priceless thing to hold. That is Nan as I knew her and loved her. This is M.A. Harper, who writes books and has known me since I was in short pants. And this is Fiona Thompson, who was at the presentation I gave because her husband Jack Thompson was Plum's best mate in Scotland. And that's the occasion of his 80th birthday. It was about 2 weeks after the Karabiner Club's 60th birthday celebrations. I've compared dates in the journal, and Plum was very sorry that he could not make your 60th. But this, I'm told anyway, the Strathy, our local paper, told me that this was a complete surprise to Plum and Nan. And he, as you can see, he's enjoying himself. He's probably still dancing. So, there we are. That is my good friend Bill Wilson and Plum in summer, spring skiing and Cairngorm. That van, Wondervogel, the van that David Fairhurst spent time in and has told me journeys of sheer terror with Plum driving him along the ski road, looking anywhere except at the road. He'd be busy explaining some finer point of ski technique to you, looking at you and demonstrating with his hands. He would take both hands off the wheel to demonstrate the ski technique to you. And there's him playing his mouth organ, his harmonica, which he did. A story that Doug Godwinton found is that he would take Nan up to the Orkney Islands and he would sit on the rocks on a summer's evening playing his harmonica. And someone told Doug, he said, whenever Plum played Home, Home on the Range, the seals would come up the stairs. I'm not saying that they came up to him and sang along with him, but it seemed to be whenever he played Home, Home on the Range, the seals would come out to listen. Plum and Nan in Avignon. And there I will leave this wonderful story. This is how I would like you to remember Plum, and I think how he remembers us. He wrote down, I know he wrote about Ivan Waller and Jack London. He also wrote down this. He said, many people have asked me why I don't write something down about my life. He wrote, I have my answer ready for them. He said, this old fool is still busy living out the next chapter. And I think that is Plum's final lesson to each and every one of us. Thank you for listening.
Oh, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to
Or
ask?
anything you would like to tell me?
Yeah. Has anybody got any supplementary information or?
Just about doing all the Monroes, you know, somebody here could tell you a bit about it because he was on the first attempt at it.
What, with Hamish Brown?
No, before
Hamish
didn't
Brown.
complete it. We didn't. But the KMC had the idea. In fact, Len Stubbs. All right, David.
Yeah.
Len Stubbs. Three of them. They got round most of them.
Two brothers.
Had to go back to work.
Really?
Yeah. Set off from Mount Hope and walk south.
You walk north, south to north?
Yeah.
Ben
Sorry.
north to south?
North to south.
Ben Lomond, isn't it? The southernmost.
Yeah.
And you didn't get to Ben Lomond?
No.
Well, you started on Ben Hope?
We didn't start till August, which
Right.
is a bad month to start, because the bad weather came in from September onwards.
Listen guys, write the book. I'll publish it for you.
I didn't complete it, but the two brothers went even further. They finished up south of Glencoe. But malnutrition got hold of them in the end. We had very bad diet, and we just had to leave things in post offices and our food, and hopefully get there, and nobody finished it.
Hamish said he went by car and did like a squirrel, stored nuts left.
Well, we used to bring stuff up, didn't we, there? Apple pies and stuff.
Yeah, some of these lads used to bring the stuff up to
Meet
Scotland and
places.
meet us.
Kathy told me this one afternoon when we had finished ski instructing and were enjoying a drink, to be honest, together. And she said, yes, Hamish, I had Hamish Brown book.
We
Hamish
did it
Brown
before
book.
Hamish Brown.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I've done that. But she wouldn't tell me any more about that. And I said she would not thank me for telling you guys tonight. So keep it in this room. But I think the world of Kathy, she'd been to my house, we exchanged Christmas cards. So, but write the book.
They probably got the idea from Len Stubbs and
There is,
you know.
I've got a diary somewhere about it.
Have you?
Yeah.
I'd be very interested because I live in
I'll give it to
Scotland.
the KMC.
Yes, all right.
Right,
You can
okay.
relay that through David to me.
Yeah.
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 There was an article in the Climate magazine about it.
Yeah, and I think that's where I missed ground a bit there. You know, when Stubbs thought of it as first thing, they were, you know, the club was quite a major part of it was walking and doing very long walks, you know. And so Stubby wanted to.
I know it's getting from one road to the next one. I mean, the Cape ones make it easy for you. They've got 11, I think. But once you leave there, it's a long way to the next one. How interesting to know that I could take this back to Scotland. Get a copy of the climber.
It might be in the Climber and Ramble. What is it?
I've got the magazine.
It's called the Climber.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then it
Because I mentioned at the beginning of the Shoes book.
I don't know what it is now.
It's I believe 3
I
months.
think Plum met the brothers, the Ripley brothers, while they were going round.
Did
I
he?
think they met at
That wouldn't
the
surprise
eldest
me.
brother, Alan, worked at Glenmore Lodge for a bit, mainly in the summer.
Right. And can you remember who the warden was? Would it be Liam
No.
Carver or would it be...
No.
Well, many famous names have been wardens.
Yeah, there was. He was quite famous among the mountaineers at the time.
Well, I know that Eric Beard went to work at Glenmore Lodge. Well, he was
Yeah,
a
right.
mountain runner. He
Yeah.
would
Oh, he
go and
used to
go and run
run
up through Munro's while
honey
dinner was being
butties.
cooked.
That's all they used to eat, honey butties.
Yeah, honey butties, that's right. That's how you live on the mountain.
Yeah. He used to run for miles.
I know.
Miles and miles. Over hills and along
Well,
roads.
Plum must have met
And all
him
he'd eat
because
was honey
he
butties.
spent a summer at Glenmore Lodge. My own diet on the hill was
Who
peanut
was
butter.
the
Peanut
warden?
butter and jam butties. I don't know if any of you have taken that.
Who was the warden then?
There's been many and I can't name
In
them
the
off the top of
60s.
my head, but that was Reverend Bob Clark and then Liam Carver followed him. And
No.
then it was Fred Harper. I could get the names for
No,
you.
yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
Shall I, so there's lots of different paraphernalia on the table at the back. We need to be out of here and all of the chairs cleared away in 15 minutes. So anybody do you want to go and stand by the table at the back? Anybody that's interested, you can go and have a look and Dave's
Thank you
got
for
some
what you
information
told
on
me
the archive.
tonight.
Can we
Thank
just,
you. And I'm
can we give
very
another round of applause? While we're